Okay, and welcome. And today we're going to be talking about Xanax. These are the top questions that our readers have asked in regards to Xanax. Does Xanax have an addictive property? Well, according to the federal government that schedules and classes drugs, it has a low risk for addiction. And I want to read exactly what they're saying about it. The drug has a low potential for abuse. The drug currently has accepted medical use and treatment. Abuse of the drug may lead to limited physical dependence or psychological dependence relative to drugs in Schedule 3. If someone comes off Xanax too fast, has been on it for a while, and has a seizure and dies, is that a limited physical dependence or is that a psychological dependence that went awry? Sounds like this drug is not being classified correctly to me. Next question. Can Xanax be stopped abruptly? Well, if you've only taken it for one night, maybe, but if you get this drug, if you neural adapt to this drug, and people can actually take a lot of this stuff that have been taking it for a while. If I took that much today, like maybe 30 milligrams of Xanax, I would, of course, probably keel over and have respiratory distress and die. But some people can actually work themselves up to that much through abusing it, and it's pretty horrific how bad people can get addicted to this stuff. Stopping it abruptly is not advised because, again, you can have a seizure from this particular medication. Next question. Should I switch Xanax to Valium to withdrawal? This is a very pragmatic approach. There is a manual called the Ashton Manual that discusses this procedure. I like where you take the Xanax and you slowly bring in the Valium as you're converting over. In other words, you don't just go straight from Xanax all the way over to Valium, because I hope our camera guys are okay back there. Because what can happen is the drugs do not metabolize the same way and could cause some sort of disparity in how the benzodiazepine is actually acting in the person's system. So you drift from one and kind of blend in the other one would be a pragmatic approach. Not everyone has to do it that way. It depends on the person. Valium has a longer half-life, which makes it more reasonable to do something like that with, because it really is a sudden stop of the medication that is the most intense part, whereas something with a longer half-life might take a bit of the edge off of that. Next question. Can Xanax be used to treat some of the symptoms of borderline personality disorder? Well, that's kind of a complicated question. I mean, it's one of those things that doesn't have really a yes or no answer, but a personality disorder is, as a psychologist would tell you, this is something that happened in the developmental stages typically, where the person didn't get their narcissistic needs met as an infant, or they didn't have boundaries put in after their narcissistic needs were met, or something. And these developmental gaps could be termed having borderline personality disorder. But a drug's not going to fix our gaps in our social strata. You know, those probably would be best actually sitting with a psychologist or someone that's really trained to help go back through some of those things, especially with some family support, if the family's in any way supportive to the situation, and approach it from there. The drugging we put too much faith in these drugs to actually do things that life needs. We need to participate in life in order to be able to do, which is to feel feelings and to wrestle with other people's feelings. That's actually part of what it's like to be a human in this domain. That's what we signed up for when we agreed to be here. What does Xanax do to the brain? Well, Xanax is, there are other drugs actually that are worse, believe it or not. The antipsychotic class does more of a neuroadaptation and rewrite of the brain than even benzos. Even like stimulants, like the ADHD meds for kids that are just wiring up their dopamine pathways with that 12 to 17-year-old range, like hitting somebody right then with things that are going to change the way their reward mechanisms work, the dopaminergic pathways. Really bad timing. But one Xanax probably, I don't know, might be a bit of a mind eraser. A whole lot of Xanax throughout your life might be like the kind of like a brown version of the thing in the Men in Black where they make you kind of forget everything and it's like nothing happened. It's kind of like a prescription for that. But on a physiological level, what it does is it makes one nerve that might be excited and like going, hey, we need to do something here, and trying to talk to another nerve, have it be less intense for that other nerve to hear that message. So it softens it floods the nerve space with GABA, which is like flooding, it's like flooding a mosh pit, let's say, at a concert with cotton balls, so that the impact of one nerve trying to talk to another is lessened. So it makes it less likely that this nerve is going to be able to talk to this nerve, which can reduce anxiety, can help people sleep. It's an inhibitory. It ups the inhibitory game of the brain, but generally not sustainably. Anything more than alcohol would be sustainable for shutting down anxiety. It works, but obviously it's not going to really work out probably in the long run. So there are holistic doctors that treat anxiety. There are therapists to talk to, and there's other ways to approach life than trying to drug it away for most people. Can Xanax be used to treat OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder? At Alternative to Meds, we have seen that there's kind of two different gradients of ruminating. There's emotional ruminating, like, that cheerleader back in 15, I didn't go to the prom, and I'm still, you're still emotionally ruminating about something where you got emotionally hurt. That's generally an endorphin pathway. Endorphin pathways like the synthetic version or the drug version of opiates, of endorphins is opiates. The type of ruminations where a person's like has this fight or flight, like there's something that they're kind of panicking about and it just winds up and goes over and over and over again, that is typically a serotonin pathway thing. And the Xanax is not hitting specifically on the serotonin pathway like a SSRI would, but, sleep will treat OCD. So it's basically just kind of shutting down your ability to like really get excited about a whole lot of anything. Is Xanax used to treat bipolar disorder? I have a bit of a knee-jerk reflex around this bipolar disorder because it's like anything that looked like human variability could technically be called bipolar disorder. Now, obviously, there are people who are rapid cycling where they're happy and they're sad and it looks pretty chaotic and it doesn't feel good for them either. That could, but some of those times it's, a person drinks at night and they wake up in the morning and they're having like rage from having their sugar drop. It could be blood sugar just itself without even the drinking. People having blood sugar swings can present as emotionally labile. How do we get into blood sugar swings? Well, we wake up, we drink coffee before we even eat. If we do eat, we might eat Pop-Tarts. These kind of things create this blood sugar, reactive hypoglycemia that can definitely be interpreted as being cuckoo, especially in the labile borderline, bipolar sort of disposition. Can Xanax treat bipolar disorder? No, it can pave over having manifestations of mood swings because you're basically going to just be like all the time, but it's not really going to treat it. Treating it is going to look for the underlying reasons why it's happening. And if someone has a disposition that is cycling like that, their prognosis is pretty good at being able to find what the cause of it is if they go to smart people that can help them figure those sorts of things out, like naturopaths or environmental medicine people, or just doctors who are not only limited by a prescription pad. What does withdrawal from Xanax feel like? Well, there's the withdrawing from crack cocaine. That's pretty low, right? I don't know. Maybe not many of our viewers have actually had a good crack addiction, but it's not. In comparison, heroin's like, ooh, wow, that sucks. Okay, here's benzos. It's like you could die coming off of these things if you don't do it well. The other stuff you might feel like you want to die, but you're not going to. You're just miserable and it's screwing with your head. This stuff physiologically can actually impact you in a way that will be a lot more than what a typical drug withdrawal is. And when folks like this end up in a drug treatment center where they're focusing more on the ways that addicts work with recreational drugs, they might be missing something very important with this class of people to the point where they could get hurt. So these folks, some folks that are abusing benzos are in the addictive class and do really well in drug treatment. They can come off the stuff pretty quick. But there's some people that are not going to be able to do well with that. And that's probably more the population that's watching this video. If you're watching it on our website, especially, these folks need a longer taper, probably need to clean neurotoxins out of their nervous system. If they're having that all the time, nonstop sort of, where their neurochemistry feels like they're standing in the middle of the freeway all the time, not just some of the time, but all the time, they're probably neurotoxic and need to clean that stuff out even before they can humanely get off of the benzos in the first place. Because otherwise it's like literally their nervous system can't regulate because the pesticides or mercury or whatever have thrown the way that their neurochemistry can actually regulate itself off to the point where they are going to have a hard time being without the medications and having it feel like it's okay. So you have to do both in tandem for certain people. What are the effects of taking Xanax and melatonin simultaneously? Well, the melatonin is not going to hurt you, and to take it with Xanax, you're not going to feel the melatonin at all. Probably the best thing to do is if melatonin is working for you, stay there, because Xanax is more than a slippery slope. It's like having a consult with the devil and signing a contract of some sort. Next question. What happens if you take Xanax and Zoloft together? Okay, you're probably, if you've never done it before, you're probably going to sleep for a little while. But people do take these drugs in combination a good bit, especially somebody who's having a sleep problem. The Zoloft will help with the sleep, and the Xanax will also help with the sleep. They're working on slightly different pathways. One is working on the GABA pathway, which the Xanax is working on the GABA pathway, and Zoloft is by and large working on the serotonin pathway. Serotonin goes on to form melatonin, so its reuptake of serotonin is likely, at least temporarily, going to probably produce a person's ability to get to sleep better. But again, just like most drugs, it typically is not sustainable. For some people it might be, but for other people it could be a catastrophe. And getting off both of those drugs, definitely doing it at home is going to be, well, it's going to be its own form of horror, probably. Last question, will Xanax stop a panic attack? Yes. Enough Xanax will actually stop a freight train if necessary. It is a sedative, and yes, it will stop a panic attack. But a lot of the reasons why people are having panic attacks could be something as simple as they're not breathing. When a person gets a ruminating thought into their brain, they can ruminate it over and over again. And one of the things is they may stop breathing because they're actually in their head and thinking so much. So the chemoreceptors that are located in the carotid will tell you if the pH of your blood is off. And if the pH of your blood is off, will then communicate to your locus ceruleans and tell you that you need to get up and run so that you breathe. And it is pretty effective for people in panic attacks. They run about a half a block and they feel better. So maybe a better way to go about that is just to have a person that is on the verge of having a panic attack start breathing. And I think that is the end of our questions on Xanax for the day. I really appreciate you tuning in. And remember, do not take anything that we're telling you as medical advice. It is information and for informational purposes only. Thank you.